Hi, and welcome to Mic Drop Insights and Lessons from CA Thought Leaders. My name is Gary Cox. I am your host. I'm also the author of the book Cultivating Champions of CI, a leader's toolbox for creating a continuous improvement culture. And in this program, I get to sit down with industry experts and we get to discuss our experiences in deploying continuous improvement and a culture of operational excellence throughout organizations. And we get the privilege to be able to share that experience with you. That's what this program is all about. And in today's episode, I get to sit down with Sergio D'Amico. It's our second time together, and he's sharing his experience with Bombardier's deployment as he supported their deployment of their management system. In today's episode, he's going to go through some of the highs and lows of what worked and maybe what didn't work quite so well and lessons learned. I think you're going to really find insightful the things that he has to share. So, I'm going to talk a little bit about your background because you mentioned the role you play as a trainer, but you're also a sort of an auditor, aren't you? You're a quality, right. Yeah. So tell our viewers a little bit about the role you play in Quebec as it relates to certification of quality components.
Okay, well, actually, it's we have in Quebec. It's called the Prix Performance Qualité. No, pardon, Prix Performance Québec. So the Quebec Performance Award. So these are the prize awarded to companies that have demonstrated excellence and great performance in their overall processes and results also. So I've been implicated in that since 2010, and as an assessor and as an expert since 2018.
Very similar
interesting.
So you obviously had a rollout plan to do this. This is not something you probably did, throughout the whole organization all at once. What was the approach?
Well, it was I think a 1-year plan. Now the context is very interesting. We had the thing is that we started out with a simpler management system, but it wasn't really dynamic. It wasn't systematic, and it's at the arrival of a new president that came from the automobile industry, well versed in management systems, that really insisted on implementing the system part, because at first it was called simply achieving excellence, but we simply had criteria to meet. So do we have this in place? Do we have that in place? But people wouldn't use them. I remember at the beginning, we'd just do KPIs and put them on the board and leave them there, but nothing happened. So, or we do like an audit let's say every 3 months, and people would learn their values like days before to make sure that
the audit. Yes. Makes sense.
But I was thinking about it when we discussed about our talk tonight, and coming from a very regulatory intensive industry, we tend to do those things, right? So let's check if the system is in place by doing an audit, which today, when I look back, that wasn't it was understandable, but it wasn't the right approach. And we'll probably talk about it later, but the best approach is simply implementing, let people live it, and one step at a time. But so basically, to come back to your question, the rolling out, I think it happened inside a year or so. So the kickoff was probably in 2009. We started with a few pilot projects in two web. Yes, there were two sites, two manufacturing sites, which had the pilot project implemented. So one site was here in Montreal, and the other one was in Belfast, but very local, not the whole plant, only sections. Right. And they tested all those mechanisms, and then they rolled out further on to the other sites. They implemented so they tried the whole system only on those two cells, one in Belfast, one here in Montreal. They fine-tuned everything. They had their lessons learned, and then they rolled out throughout the organization. And I think took maybe 1 or 2 years to roll out everything, the whole system throughout the organization. And we started in obviously in operations first and ended in some supporting functions like maybe finance at the end. So that the rollout looked like that. It was really planned out well in that sense. So we had pilot halls, we had change management personnel also implicated, and communication set up. So that was really, really well planned.
And the message was always coming from the top as to why this was important, and tying it to the strategy, both your 1 year, 5 year strategy, and then of course ultimately how it becomes part of the values of the organization.
Yes, absolutely. And one thing that I'd like to add regarding high management, one thing that really was successful, and I encourage everybody to do that, is to start deploying on the executive level whenever you
Okay,
have these management systems to put in place. So the executive level started out using these tools, and then they train their personnel. So it sends the
interesting.
signal that we buy the executives buy the system and they teach it. So it becomes really also it's empowering. It gives an empowering feeling. We had the VP of uh, is it operations? He taught his personnel the problem solving, and he was good at it. So that really left a good impression of uh, of the system. So they each director or VP had this whole module to train people. And when we organize in our sections, well, we had 3 VPs and directors teach. For instance, one VP came in and talked about how to manage the 8 wastes, as we call them. Another VP came and talked about the how do we use the master plans, and we
Hmm.
encourage them. And the message came from them that you can use your plans, print them out, and scribble on them in the daily management room. That's okay. If your plan changes, write it down directly on the paper. And that came from them. Another message from one of the VPs said, see the problems as gifts. And
Mm.
that really changed the perception, because that there's always this perception that problems are bad news. So they started to send the right message of saying problems are gifts, and we it's okay to solve them and to find some and to solve them more, and this is how we get better. So we had these VPs who came in and gave training. So when we organized on our part in quality assurance, well, we had the VPs and directors coming in and teaching the employees about how to use the model, and that really resonated also with the employees. So that worked well also.
And I can imagine it would. It would certainly send the right message to have the senior leadership uh, doing the training and doing the teaching, because then you're demonstrating, the old adage, walking the talk, right? And that's clearly what that would do. Did you find that? Did you find it always went well? Because I mean, a lot of these times when you take your first try at it, what were some of the challenges that came out of this?
That's an interesting question, Gary. And the 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 challenge, the overall challenge that was diagnosed, that there was a unanimous throughout all sites, was problem solving. And this was unanimous. A lot of people weren't doing it, or a little bit of problem solving. But another thing that's interesting is management didn't push either to get those problems identified and solved. So there was
Hmm.
um, an issue with that, and it's not really about blaming people that we were not doing it. Is we're not used to it culturally. I think well, personally, it's a cultural perception that problems are bad, and trying to find time to solve problems, it's demanding also, because we asked to do some problem solving on top of the regular work that people were doing. So that was an issue. So what was done was they created a problem solving team to support people, not only in terms of basic problem solving, but also technical problem solving. We use there, well, two schools of thought. So the 5 why method, which is very basic. So that was for
Right.
those low hanging fruits that we identified. But also we adopted a technical method from the Kepner-Trego organization. They had their own method, but it's very technical. And in-house also, we train people to become specialists of technical problem solving. And those are in support of all other sites to help people with problem solving, to encourage people to do problem solving. So that was an issue also. And if I may say, other issues that happened, one was it was a quick deployment. So it was a little bit overwhelming. We deployed KPIs all at once. And that was really a good lessons learned, because let's not forget KPIs. It's a lot of information. So let's say there's all of a sudden 15 KPIs to go through each day. That becomes a burden, because for each KPI you have to take a decision. So that's overburdening. So that's what because I taught that course afterwards, maybe 10 years later, with another organization. I gave a course on how to implement KPIs, and that's the number one tip I give them is go at it one KPI at a time, and make sure that people get used to it. They know they understand it, they know what it means.
Yes.
They can, and they understand also the objectives, what's the purpose, all these details. Once they're used to it and they're managing it well, then you can introduce a second KPI and so on, a third one, a fourth one. Make it easy for people. It's like learning to ride a bike, or any other habit.
Absolutely. So. Yeah, it reminds me of the book, The 4 Disciplines of Execution. Have you read that book?
No.
The 4 Disciplines. It's just over here. I'm just going to reach over and pull it out, because it's on my book. It's on my bookshelf. Yeah, my office is small. I can read. It's called The 4 Disciplines of Execution.
Okay.
And it talks about, in the book, they talk about the need to recognize your wildly important goals. And they talk about the need to keep your key performance indicators, those metrics for those wildly important goals, to a very few. And that's the lesson that you're saying was a takeaway for you in that you can't deploy too many objectives or too many wildly important goals, because then nothing's important and it just becomes a bit more of a challenge.
Exactly. Yes.
Yeah. Interesting.